You're tuned in to Horror Slop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is Horror Slop.
Alright, kicking things off with a personal favorite. It's messy, it's weird, and it sets the tone real fast. Story 1. Don't blink.
Hi everyone, my name is Ava Wayne and today I am 8 years old, smiley face. I was 8 yesterday for the first time, but now I am even older. I got to use my mom's computer today, but don't tell her. Last night when my dad came home from work, he brought me a big chocolate cake with vanilla frosting that had my name on it, and I got to blow out the candles. I didn't even have to eat dinner first. It was the best day even though I didn't have a party. And number X200B. It doesn't matter though, because I've never had a party before. My mom and dad say that I'm not allowed because we can't have any other people in the house. They lie and tell me that it's because we live too far away, but I know that it is because of my friend Evie who lives with us. Evie looks exactly like me and we are like sisters. She is not really my sister though, we just say that. And number X200B. Evie can do this really cool trick where she can move my arms and say things in my voice. Sometimes it is a little bit annoying, but she's my friend so it's okay. My mom and dad don't like Evie though, and this makes her very mad. My mom says that Evie needs help and we have to see someone for her. I don't know what she means, but Evie says that my mom is a liar and I don't like telling Evie that she is wrong. My dad gets really mad and yells at Evie to stop and to shut up and leave me alone, but that just makes her more mad. I've tried to tell him to stop, but he doesn't listen. And number X200B. Yesterday when my dad brought home the cake, he asked me if I liked it and I told him yes and that Evie liked it too. He got really mad, but my mom told him that it was not the time and he didn't say anything about her. And number X200B. We ate cake anyway, but I didn't ask if Evie could have some because it was finally a good time. We finished the entire cake all by ourselves and I was even allowed to have 2 whole pieces. It was awesome. And number X200B. 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 Evie let me use my mom's laptop because she says she knows the password. She told me I could write on here like a diary and post it so other people could read it. Isn't that so cool? I wonder who is reading this, haha, smiley face. Evie just made me lunch and it was a sandwich with meat again. I don't eat this much meat because my mom likes for me to eat my veggies, but Evie says that mom is not the boss anymore so I can eat whatever I want. I had a lot of chips and my tummy started to hurt and I really wanted my mom, but Evie said that it was okay and she could make it feel better. And number X200B. And number X200B. I think I'm going to go play hide and seek with Evie now. Smiley face. Love, Ava, love.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
Rachel. Rachel. I'm on the cold tiles, clutching the kitchen knife tighter with each bang. I know he'll get in eventually. I know he will, and that'll be that. So I lie here. The only place left to go is memory. I'd said, anything. What's out there we don't have here? He asked. An account I didn't know, money to her. 8 years together. Money away from us, money to her. Since then, there have been presents. Cooking. Angrier all the time. I went looking. I didn't want to find it but knew I would. I saw what he was turning me into. The same clothes. The same hair. The same look in the eyes. He screamed. Not again. Not again. Rachel's not even my name. I suppose it must have been hers.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
We leave her place and tell her to contact us if she sees anything again. I mean, we couldn't really do anything at that point. We were somewhat surprised when we got another call from her the very next day. We drive down there and search the house again. We find nothing, again. Problem is, the house seems different this time. Almost as if there were some subtle detail that made it a separate place from the one we were in yesterday. My partner, Beck, says that he noticed it as well, but doesn't quite understand what's wrong. She takes out her phone and tells us to watch the video that she's pulled up. It was footage of her in the house. She's running around, breathing frantic. And then we see him. A large figure, covered head to toe in what appears to be a black bodysuit. He lumbers towards the camera as Carol screams and ducks into a room, locking it from the inside. There's a few bangs on the door before we can hear footsteps walking away. We decide to keep an eye on her house for the night. We're discreet, parking about a block down the road in an unmarked car. We're both fully awake, ready to go as soon as we see some sketchy shit. We get a call from dispatch a few moments later. They're telling us that Carol has called 911 again, saying that there are now multiple people in her house. They ask if we need backup. We say yes. As I pace around in petrified confusion, Beck speaks up, "There's rooms here that shouldn't be." "I've been counting," he says. "There were 9 total the last time we came. There are 10 now. You didn't notice it?" The basement. There was only door down there last time. We hear a knock on the door about 10 seconds later. It sounds agitated. We look out the living room windows, but aren't met with the red and blue police lights. We're hesitant to answer, of course. I decide to take a step forwards, but Beck pulls me back. He looks at me and shakes his head, whispering, "We left the door open, remember?" He was right. My radio starts crackling. Another call from dispatch. They're telling us that we need to leave the house immediately. That Carol called again, saying we were going to die, in a deathly monotone voice. The knocking has stopped, but we can hear footsteps in the basement. Something is in here with us. The backup still isn't here, so we decide to just get into our car. However, we see somebody down the street peering through our driver's side window. He's large, dressed in what appears to be a black full-body suit. He looks away from the window and directly at us. It's hard to tell from this far, but the suit doesn't seem to have any eye holes. Beck speaks up, "Sir, please step back from the vehicle." His voice cracks in the middle of the sentence. He's terrified. I don't know how he expects us to do that. We drive back to the station in complete silence. As we park, Beck finally lets out a sigh. He reciprocates an equally confused stare at me. What the hell are you talking about? The dude who owns the house. What? It was a lady named Carol. How'd you forget already? I try not to think about it too much as my head hits the pillow. I manage to drift off to sleep about 3 hours later, only to be woken up immediately by the telephone. Barely coherent, I answer it.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah, that's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
Prison is Hell, by Sam Marduk. My only commodity is my toilet paper and my journal. I earned the journal through much work and good behavior. The pencil I write with is dull and has no eraser, like that a golfer would use to keep scorecards. I am allowed 4 hours per day with it, between breakfast and lunch. I receive the journal and pencil with my meal and return it in kind. If the pencil has any pieces missing or there are any extensive tears in the pages, then I will lose it for the following day. So I comply. I comply so I may have some mild comfort in this concrete cage in which I slowly die. I killed 20 people to be exact. 2-0. 2-0. 2-0. 2-0. 20. Even and smooth. My compulsion made it this way. 21 would have made getting arrested a living hell. 15 would have been okay, but 20 was much cleaner. Increments of 5. Always increments of 5. Sometimes during a shopping trip I would grab a stick of gum so as to have 20 or 10 or 30 items even. However, in the case of the killings it was much more intense. The problem was the itch I felt in between. It was a gnawing pain in my mind from 1 to 4 and 6 to 9. The itch was not as bad during 5s, but 10s were the best. However, that number will eventually attract attention. That number is partially what got me caught, but I had to scratch the itch, so to speak. It made me empathize with vampires in the old horror stories, the sensation of aching thirst that cannot be quenched. It is nightmarish. The first time I killed was interesting. I should have felt the need to immediately kill again, as I did in later years, but I didn't. They say mental illness worsens with age. I guess that's what kept me from acting again so soon, but I'm not sure. Far above this section of woods was a road, and from what I could see a vehicle burst through railing. The wrecked vehicle, a '69 Chevy C20 truck, lay decimated some 40 feet below the roadway in the brush and rocks. I remember this truck, because I wound up purchasing one many years later in a secret nostalgia for myself. Either way, the driver had pulled himself from the wreckage and crawled in agony upwards of 50 feet to the nearest tree, where his strength was slowly failing him. It was a rush of which I cannot explain. The excitement of ending a human life is next to none. I was content for a fleeting moment. I stared at the body for some time before taking a bloody shred of his pant leg that was hanging by a thread. I just wanted to have a keepsake. That was my first kill. I was never caught, nor even suspected. Growing up in the mountains of the South allowed much privacy, and it allowed me to get away with murder. As time grew, so did the feeling of power and accomplishment. I felt like God. No one even knew I was the way I was. I would never be a suspect, because I knew to hide. I hid well, because I knew how to hide. From the time I was a boy I knew how to blend in. Sometimes it was a challenge because of my appearance, but I learned a simple skill: how to hide in plain sight. I was able to work hard in the background. I made good grades and maintained very few close friendships throughout school, so no one would discover anything about me. However, I made sure everyone had a nice thing to say about me: carrying groceries, helping kids with studying, always using manners. I graduated in the upper ranks of my class and soon attended the local college. After I earned a degree in business, I worked hard where I could and raised enough money to buy my own rig. I worked by riding the highways as a trucker for years and eventually bought 2 more rigs. By 35 I was a respectable business owner in my old town with a dispatch and a few drivers. I obviously still drove, even as the owner, because it kept me close to my only real passion. I hid well in plain sight because white people love a nigger. In a town of 90% white and 10% other, I learned to blend despite being a minority. Learn to talk like them, learn to walk like them, and you can manipulate them into whatever you want. My mother died shortly after I graduated high school from heart failure, and I felt liberated, for I held her opinion highly. Her opinions often kept me in line and respectable. When she died, I was free to pursue my own interests. My father, while a good man in his own right, never held much weight in my actions, so I walked the path I chose for myself despite what his feelings may be. Either way, I dwindled for some time after the first murder. The urge slowly grew. By high school I kept my eyes peeled for another opportunity to snuff out a life. Finally, that day came. I learned 2 things that evening. The first, that a well-mannered, well-educated young lady was no different than anyone else in regards to having a darker side. She wanted to be remembered for a party. Not her good grades, not her generous deeds, not her modest manner of dress, but a party. Everyone has a dark side in some way. This was the first thing I learned. The second was that if everyone is drunk and dancing on the roof, you could bump a certain young lady discreetly enough to send her 3 stories down into the concrete and make it look like an accident. She landed with a smack that can only be replicated in my dreams. This was the first time I was aroused by a killing. I'm not sure why. She was in a 2-piece, which I assume her parents knew nothing about, and her skin was pale and smooth. Her deep brown hair flowed past her shoulders, and the look of utter confusion and terror in the face of innocence was priceless. Blood pooled from her head and seeped into her nearby swimming pool. I fancied her, you could say, but only because she represented something that does not exist. Human innocence. When her skull cracked hard against the pavement, I was instantly excited. I had to sneak away to handle it, and steal a memento from the girl's room. Meanwhile, the remaining partygoers descended into madness trying to repair a situation that was far beyond broken. The chaos I caused that night again resurfaced my deep sense of accomplishment that only comes from death. Of course, things would have a way of catching up with me. I was incarcerated with an unfortunate mountain of evidence. I wouldn't say I covered every base perfectly to ensure not getting caught, but I felt like I was careful enough. I guess not in hindsight. I remember the day I was arrested. I had turned 40 the month prior and was on the road delivering a shipment of plywood. I was behind the wheel of my rig in rural Alabama. I was taking a back road because I enjoy the scenery, and when you're the boss you can set your own schedule. At this point, I had killed 19 people and the itch was present. I would have to rub the back of my neck when I thought about it. It needed to be scratched. I needed to take care of it. When I stepped out of the truck I addressed her. "Pardon me, ma'am," I said calmly. "I know how to disarm. I have worked on my speaking voice for years in order to betray their security into my hands. Are you all right?" She stepped out from behind her hood and I saw her in better light. She was a young, Hispanic woman. Her clothes were tattered, but I think that was intentional. She had silky, dark hair to her shoulders and black librarian glasses. She was pretty, which was a bonus for me. Consider it like a dinner. You're going to get your meal, but when it includes dessert then it is all the better. I also knew she could complete this cycle. She could be the 20th and I could rest. Best yet, she was petite, so there would be little fight. I don't know. I promise, I edged, in my best, zip-a-dee-doo-dah voice, I'll take you straight into town and we can find you a phone. My wife would kill me if I let a young lady stay stranded in the woods. Okay, she said, with her fear betraying her skepticism, thank you. I'll get the door for you. Her jaw connected with the studded metal stairs full force. I know some teeth were broken by the crunch that emanated from her skull. She fell limp to the dirt as I lifted her onto my shoulder. She didn't stir long enough for me to grab a large socket wrench from my rig. I could feel the warm blood from her mouth pouring down my shoulder. When I had finished on all fronts, I took her wallet from her jeans off beside us. Hannah, I believe her name was. I took her glasses as they fell off when her face collided with my truck and avoided the wrath of the socket wrench. They had her name engraved inside the temple. I drove, leaving the scene entirely. I had to re-enter the highway some time later and saw lights in my mirror. I had been stopped before. Once even with a body in the back, so I was not worried. Yeah, we found him. Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back. Why? I demanded. I was not about to be cuffed and restrained for no good reason. He then turned me violently to my truck and slapped cuffs around my wrists. From there he sat me on the pavement and called for backup. When other officers arrived, one finally noticed the blood on my back. They then found the glasses. They then found the poorly wiped down socket wrench. They then received word of a brutal mutilation several towns over. Like I first wrote, I deserve to be in prison, but I don't regret in the slightest what I've done. The trial was grueling and irritating. Since I killed across state lines, there was arguments as to where to have my trial, but it became a federal issue, which only meant more bureaucracy. My lawyer explained many of the killings would be circumstantial at best, but just as many have my now connected DNA to the scene and are going to be nearly impossible to deny. I decided to throw in the towel. The media was out for blood, the public was out for blood, and the jury was out for blood. I had my fill, so now it was time to pay the favor forward. There was no way to avoid a life sentence, so I may as well come clean and regale the tales of my exploits to a room of terrified jurors and family members burning with hatred. The day of sentencing I stood still and stoic before the judge. I could feel the eyes of all those present attempting to sear me, but failing. He was being melodramatic. Not in history had there been such an absurd sentence. What's worse, the number was uneven. Meaning the rest of my life I would have to say 1001 when discussing my sentence. He knew this. My demeanor slightly shaken, I asked the judge, why 1001? The judge leaned over his podium. He smiled with a smugness that still boils my blood and he calmly replied. To torment you. That's how I got where I am now. I don't interact with the other inmates or the guards. I just mind my business as best I can. I don't like to think about my sentence because it makes me itch. Similar to when you haven't paid a certain bill, but don't have the funds. It's a wincing, mental discomfort. Suddenly, I felt a large hand grip my shoulder and order me forward. The next thing I knew I was being escorted to the warden's office. I was somewhat stunned, but complied. After what felt like an eternity he spoke up. Let's go over your file. His voice carried, a mild southern accent sprinkled in. I did not respond. He gave no indication as to why, so I would bide my time. Count 10. Confessed. Convicted. You took a lost 12-year-old and drowned him. You kept his retainer. You were doing well in life by this point, but murder still called. Didn't it? Count 11. Confessed. Convicted. Ah, this one was special, wasn't she? That gas station employee who you stalked for a while. Followed her home and broke in. Took your time and did it right. She broke your perfect streak and you were going to make her pay right. Kept her locket as a token of your affection. Count 12. Confessed. Convicted. You took a young man to your from a local club in Missouri. Strangled him the moment the door was closed. Chopped him up and kept his teeth. Count 20. Confessed. Convicted. The one that brought you down. You couldn't resist her. You were too careless. Too excited. Now you're here. You took her glasses and bashing her head in and assaulting her. He took a deep breath and his outline sat back. Do you know what they call you? He asked me incredulously. I was livid. He completely bastardized my work. I had done so much and he swept over it like an obituary column. I glared at him in the dark before answering, the scavenger hunt killer. I hated that name. They donned me the scavenger hunt killer because my murders spanned so far and I collected odd, disconnected items. Again, my works and efforts were reduced to a joke. It still makes me sick. The warden spoke up again. Are you sorry? He continued, I don't get it really. You're a highly intelligent, healthy and well-spoken man, why on earth would you throw that away? I waited for him to continue. Yes, he sat, still shadowed, but I knew he was smirking. What does that have to do with God? I know I should have had much more important questions to ask in that moment, but I was curious. I assumed he meant I should be thankful. It was me. I lay covered in blood on the shower floor. I had been stabbed from the looks of it. I stared at him. I stared at the photographs. I simply could not accept it. I know it seems odd, but hear me out. He sat upright, ready to make his case. Do you know what the Universalists are? No. Well, he continued without missing a beat. Basically it states that everyone gets into heaven. Even if you aren't necessarily in their denomination. You died this morning. You served one of your 1001 life sentences. Welcome to number 2. I stood up. This isn't funny. I'm leaving. I walked out of the warden's office that day, feeling a hopelessness I have never known. The prison was the same, but it wasn't. It was lonelier. Darker. First, lifetime does not mean from the age you are incarcerated. I expected a 40-year life sentence. But after speaking with a few other inmates serving like myself, who I see sometimes sparingly, I learned that it varies somewhere from 80 to 120 years. It varies, but it is always at least 80. Second, each go-around changes you. The prisoners don't notice you. The others like you have fewer words. The guards seemed always outside of the line of sight, even when they would interact. They were like fleeting shadows. Next, I learned that suicide doesn't work. I learned the same way every inmate in here like me does. I slit my wrists and they just ached for a week. I swallowed bleach and had a miserable stomachache, but no death. I hung myself where I choked and flailed, fully conscious, for 8 straight hours until a guard found me while bringing my breakfast the following morning. Finally, escaping isn't an option. We have runners sometimes. Men, who just finished their first sentence. The guy just snapped. I guess he pulled maybe 60 years before dying in his sleep. He just panicked and ran. The snipers didn't even turn. He grabbed the fence and immediately fell to the ground. From there he shook violently. He died right there of a heart attack. I saw him a week later. 3rd life sentence. Half crippled. I guess we get punished if we try to leave. I don't know if it's permanent. He was a wreck upon returning. It reminded me of the cats in my neighborhood as a boy. The first time you hurt it, the animal twitches and becomes neurotic, but given enough time, it accepts its fate. The man now spends his days staring silently behind dead eyes at whatever light source is around. I'm leaving this journal for anyone who is a criminal or wants to become one. I have between 80,000 to equals 100,000 years left. I do not feel remorse, but I do wish I knew then what I know now. This is simply a warning. 100,000 years of sickly green floors and cold steel doors that move for nothing. 1,001 life sentences. 1,000 to go. With 1,000 life sentences, at least it's a nice clean number. I hope I don't die too soon and ruin this nice, even lifetime. Because the next one will be hell.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
We never open the door when there's only one knock, by Like Hided. Please, just let me in, it's getting cold. The voice was familiar, only older than I remembered. Very close to detail. Using my old nickname was a nice touch as well. Besides, I wasn't an idiot. I heard the knock and I would not open that door. But never, absolutely never, should you open the door when there's only one knock. It was the very first thing we were told when we moved to this neighborhood all those years ago. Please, go away, I whispered. I'd looked through the window. There was nobody in front of our door. I don't know how much time had passed before I finally grabbed my phone and called Max, who's not only our neighbor but one of my closest friends. She's here, I said. I knew I wasn't making much sense, I didn't know how to word my thoughts. Who? Where? He answered. Ruby. Silence. Wadash, Max started speaking but stopped. She knocked. That was enough information for him. You didn't open, did you? I shook my head, which of course he couldn't see. I'm not sure how many minutes passed, but Ruby had stopped asking me to open the door. Hey, Lainey, I don't think the bell is working, I heard Max, maybe they screwed with it. I swallowed. You could knock. His voice became louder and louder until it hit a frequency that almost made my eardrums explode. I didn't move, I didn't speak, and finally, the doorbell rang and the voice became silent. Slowly I got up from the door to look outside. We were sitting in the living room with tea that had already turned cold. I don't open up about Ruby often, but hearing her voice today really messed me up. Max smiled. Jack was a stuffed toy in the shape of a pumpkin. Well, she wanted to be just like you. It's sweet. I nodded. Ruby was a year younger than me, but she used to act as if we were twins. She wore my clothes, played the same sports, and always wanted to hang out with me and my friends. When I think about it now, I think it was adorable. Of course back then I found it insufferable. I sighed. For days I took Jack everywhere with me, even to the bathroom. It was probably just out of pettiness, but that toy became everything to me. So when I came home from school one afternoon and saw that Ruby had cut it in half, I screamed at her like never before. She only looked at me with big teary eyes. I nodded. Of course, I knew it was just some stupid fight between kids, but if I could turn back time I'd give her every shitty toy I owned. This happened 5 years ago. Ruby would be 16 now. Maybe now she was. Just in a different way. He raised an eyebrow. No, I'm serious. I mean, it's not possible that I actually heard her earlier. He shrugged. I mean, you did hear a knock. I don't think it was actually her though. I don't think it was her either. But I do think it was mimicking her, or trying to, I said. For what it's worth, I think it was smart that you didn't open the door. Maybe we're all just a little crazy, but better safe than sorry, right? The good thing about Max was, I never felt awkward around him. He regularly stayed over since we were little. Especially often after Ruby was gone. Having him here really helped against the silence. My mind became easier, and my body heavier. Real thoughts started to mix with dreams. I was beginning to fall asleep. It came from the front door downstairs, but I heard it loud and clearly. My heart started racing just like it did this afternoon. Lala, it's dark. Please come and get me, Ruby's new voice cried from outside. Max, please tell me you hear this. The eyes of my friend were wide open, but he didn't speak. He didn't move. I ran over to him and tried to shake him, but his whole body was stiff. Only his eyes moved. They're pulling me away, Lala, please help me. I don't know what happened then, but I immediately jumped up and ran downstairs. Some kind of instinct kicked in. Maybe it was her. Maybe I could pull her back inside. But if this was really Ruby, was she also the one doing this to Max? I have Jack. They fixed him, Lala. We don't need to fight anymore. Those words pierced through my body and woke something up inside of me. I stepped away from the door and walked back upstairs, passing my room where Max was still lying still. But I didn't stop, I walked to the next room. Ruby's old bedroom. Everything there looked just the way it did when she was still here. My parents could never change it. Everything was still the same. And Jack was still placed on her bed where I put it 5 years ago after I'd sewn it back together. They almost got me.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
I found a list of rules in a government facility in Goa. They're the only reason I'm still alive, by training, print 9035. I'm writing this from somewhere deep below the Konkan cliffs. A place not found on any satellite image. The air tastes like damp stone and iron fillings, and the only light comes from a pulsating red emergency beacon. I've been hiding here for 9 hours, maybe more. The tranquilizers distort time. They wanted me sedated. They didn't want me lucid enough to remember. But I remember everything now. The rules were scribbled in blood and ink. Some rules were underlined. Others scratched out. All of them were weird. Number the rules to survive in BHD Sector 5, do not share. Do not ask. Rule 1, when the ceiling begins to breathe, do not look up. Close your eyes. Count to 11 using your heartbeats. Not seconds. Sub-rule 1A, if you lose count, press your thumb hard into your left eye. The pain will reset your perception. Rule 2, if you hear your mother calling your name, ignore it. Your mother is not here. She died in incident, March 14, 72. This includes any voice using her tone, even if it knows your childhood nickname. Conditional clause: if the voice apologizes for your father's death, recite the phrase, "Go and never forgets." Rule 8: if you see Naveen again, do not let him touch you. Number: the facility wasn't built for experiments. It is the experiment. The Goa coastline hides many secrets, but BHD Sector 5 isn't just hidden, it's forgotten. I've read files in the abandoned data terminals. Yes, I hacked them, thank you, 2 semesters of electrical engineering. This facility used to be a Portuguese-era salt mine. But that's just the surface. They've built deeper. Much deeper. I've gone down 14 floors underground. Each level is colder than the last, but the cold doesn't touch your skin. It touches your thoughts. I think the guards aren't protecting us from the outside. They're protecting the outside from what we become. I saw myself walking in the hallway. Not a reflection. Not a trick of light. I hadn't even seen a Rule 10. Not until I flipped the note over, behind the ink stains and old blood. There it was. Half erased. Barely readable. If they answer with anything other than, "not yet," then they are not you. Kill them. Quickly. Number: the sedatives don't keep you down. They wake you up. They dose you every 12 hours. They say it's for anxiety. But I've stopped taking the pills. My veins burn with something else now, clarity. Not mentally. Not spiritually. This place was built to explore what's beneath human consciousness. What sleeps below the self. They've opened a door in my mind. And something has walked through. Number: code break, hidden message. Put it together, Ritwitty. Look familiar. Rearranged, it spells, IT at righty. Still sounds strange, until you shift the letters using the sequence from Rule 7, 99 down in multiples of 7, as a cipher. That's your puzzle, Mr. Somebody. I've given you the key.
You're still tuned to Horus Lop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Part 1. Part 4. Well, I'll just start telling you what happened. I'm starting to shake as I even think about writing everything down, but I have to finish this. I put my phone in my pocket and watched David from across the street. He was eating dinner just like I said in my post. His phone clearly went off, because he perked up his head and grabbed his phone from the table. I'd seen his phone go off whenever I posted before, so I knew he had set an alert. I told him that I'd email him the new address 15 minutes before it was time to meet. He didn't respond. I didn't want him to have the address too early and show up to set any traps. He really should have countered with a location of his own, but he didn't. I stood up. Time to go to the warehouse and wait. When I arrived, it was already almost 9 p.m. Not completely dark yet, but getting there. I walked around the perimeter of the warehouse, looking for any sign that David had beaten me here. There wasn't any sign that I could see. The factory had a single floor that was one big, open space. High above it, catwalks ran along the rafters, all leading from the warehouse manager's office, which was a metal cube suspended at one end of the warehouse. Shelf scaffolding that had been abandoned broke up the empty space. Crates and pallets were strewn around here and there, making hiding places. I had previously come and strategically arranged them in case it came down to a firefight. There was nothing left to do but to wait now. I sent him the address at 9:45. David tried all 3 doors. He skipped over the only one that was unlocked until he absolutely had to. He knew what a funnel was, but he had no choice. The windows were too high and would result in a very high fall once he got in. Slow clapping filled the echoing room. Fuck you, David. Hashtag, fuck David King. Xander, you brilliant bastard. Go get your girl. We are coming for you, David. Thousands of these, almost all saying the same thing. How does it feel to have people rooting for you? Do you feel better equipped to fight me now? Where is she? I enunciated. David knocked on the door behind him, and it opened. In shuffled Katie. Her face was red and shimmering with tears. Duct tape had been wrapped around her entire head several times, covering her mouth. Her wrists had been similarly wrapped. A band of tape also tied her ankles together, but had enough slack that she could take small steps. A thick arm was wrapped around her neck as a tall blonde man with extremely curly hair guided her into the room. I said to leave your partner behind. I shouted. It echoed. Send Katie forward and leave. Sorry, I don't have a guarantee that you won't release all that information anyway. Come on out here and we'll discuss my terms. Like hell I am. David looked to his partner, and his partner used his free arm to punch Katie in the side. She cried out as best she could through the duct tape and faltered, but the blonde man held her up by her neck. I stood up. My hiding place was off to David's left, so I walked in a semicircle until I was directly in David's line of sight. Let's get this over with, I growled. So hostile, David commented. What's your first term? My turn. I tried to hide my shaking hands as I pulled my phone out. I went into my email drafts on a throwaway account where I had saved a copy and emailed it to him. I pulled my Ruger SR-45 handgun out of the concealed carry holster I'd worn and tried to get a clear shot. He was too fast and had caught me by surprise, so she was in front of him before I'd even lined him up in the sight. So, you got a gun after all, he said coolly. Didn't see that part in your posts. Relax, I'm just making sure I can read in peace. He took his time reading through the data dump. His expression changed between surprise and a smirk repeatedly. Well now, he said, putting his phone away and slipping his now free arm around Katie's neck. I had no idea I was so careless. He sounded anything but careless. Katie gasped as he suddenly gripped her neck tighter and pressed the muzzle against her temple. But you haven't changed enough. I can see it in your face and your trembling hands. You are still you, Xander. You've changed your exterior, but inside you have the same motivations and weaknesses. He tightened his grip on Katie again. I stood my ground. I wanted to take a shot, but didn't want to risk him being faster than me. I was confident in my aim, but not my speed. In an instant, the gun had left her temple, fired a shot into the floor, and returned to her head. She sobbed, and the heat of the barrel on her skin must have hurt. My face answered him. What did that even mean? Of course I did. I tightened my jaw. I refused to admit he was right. This isn't about saving her. This is about outsmarting me. Keeping Katie safe and sound is just a result, David said, his smile growing. So, in that sense, you and I are the same now. It's about outsmarting the other one. You started out simply living life, then progressed to defending yourself, then to protecting your loved ones, and now you've arrived where I wanted you to be all along, trying to ruin me. It took you a couple years, but you made it. At least, most of the way. Like your own mother. I snipped. The door behind David silently opened. I'd oiled those hinges for hours, making sure they made absolutely no noise. "I'm about to get a lot sicker," he said. He'd started to pull the trigger, when he was tackled from behind. Katie tumbled out of his grasp as he tried to use both arms to catch himself. His gun went off, but the shot hit the wall. "Remember me, bitch." Clark jeered, and then punched in a downward arc into the side of David's head. David dropped to the floor, but he was still conscious. He grabbed Clark's legs and tore him to the ground. I raced forward and pulled Katie out of the scuffle. I dragged her out the door before getting her to her feet and cutting the tape on her hands with my pocket knife. There wasn't time to get the layers off her head. She was wide-eyed. There were 2 guns in the room, both on opposite sides. 2 of us, and only one of him. Clark rolled off the desk and jumped into David as he ran for the gun. They both slammed into the wall. I crawled for my gun, which was just out of reach by a couple feet. There was another crash behind me. My fingers wrapped around the gun and I twisted around on the ground, aiming it in their direction. I had turned just in time to see David fire a shot into Clark. Even after he'd stumbled back against the wall and slid down, I kept firing just to be sure. Just to make sure that the fucker would never get back up again. I went to my previously established hiding place and hunkered down to stay hidden. I sent a text to the server my script was on and entered the password to cancel the info dump. There never was a second person, that was a bluff. There is no reason to release that information to you now since David is dead. I'm sorry, I really appreciate the level of support to ruin David, but there's no point now. I thought he'd still be alive afterward. The police will get it eventually as evidence, though. I also tapped out "I am alive" in the Reddit thread to alert everyone that I had survived. Then, I collapsed into sleep. This morning, I was thinking clearly again and feeling better. I ate and drank lots to counter the shock. I have started making plans on where I'll go next. It isn't safe to stay here much longer. Originally, we had intended to lock David in the manager's office for the police to find. Clark had called the police just before attacking. Circumstances had changed that plan. Some of you may wonder, well, what if David hadn't taken you up into the manager's office? We had contingency plans, that wasn't the only option. Regardless, all of our plans involved arresting David, not killing him. It was a last resort option and wasn't built into any plan. Didn't know I was prepared to kill until I had my gun aimed at David King. I don't think I've fully processed the fact that I've killed someone. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel or act or think or anything. I feel like I'm acting the wrong way. Anyway, there's another part that will help persuade the prosecutor to drop the charges against me. I lied before when Hernandez came to visit me in jail. I said he told me he couldn't talk about Isaac's death, but he did tell me. They had found a video file on Isaac's computer from the day he died. He'd been recording himself playing games for YouTube when there was a crash of silverware in the background. Isaac didn't hit pause on the recording, and left the room to investigate. David had walked out and locked the door behind him. He'd made a mistake and hadn't checked what was running on the computer. All he saw was the game. He had accepted David's deal and demanded that I be given half of the $15,000 he was paid. David, as you know, only gave me $2,000, but Hernandez had hoped it would help me lay low and evade capture until he could successfully contest the evidence. We fully intend to report the bribe to the police. He told me that after my escape from the car, the police were very suspicious about the circumstances of my escape. There were too many holes in the story, and Hernandez had been sure to point out every last one repeatedly to his boss. A lot of you pointed them out too. Paint from the truck rubbing off, bars separating the front seat from the back seat, GPS in the truck marking his whereabouts, and the location of the crash in relation to the time David sounded the alarm, etc. David had clearly been desperate to get me out of jail. He risked bribing an official and left a lot of his plan up to chance to get me out. David just didn't want to end the game yet. If I went to jail, it was over. Yet there were still so many ways he could ruin my life. His need for quick action led to mistakes. Hernandez also told me when he came to visit that Jackson had turned up. He'd come home a couple days after I was arrested and was brought in for questioning. He had proof and witnesses that he had been staying with his family for a few days. When asked about the break-in and theft, he told his story. There are still some questions that I don't have answers to. We haven't been able to figure out what he did with all the things he stole from us. We also don't know who the partner is. Hernandez should know that in a few days and let me know. I also don't know how the keylogger got on my computer, or when the tracking app was installed on my phone, or how David was able to provide my social security number, driver's license number, and all other accurate information to the credit card companies. The same goes for the fraud that was committed against my parents. I can't help but wonder if David had been in our house before the break-in and done all of that. As for Clark, his disgraceful exit was a fabrication to throw David off. It was my idea to make him disappear from my life and take the target off of his back. It was both to protect him from David's rage, and so that he could support me in the background. His mom did come and bail him out, but she was much kinder about the situation and worried like all moms do. It was his idea to plant the information about hiding his bank information on scraps of paper around town. It was placed as a joke and a way to tell if he was reading the series. We wanted to see if David would go hunting for them. He didn't, but that was probably because he was on the run still. With Katie, I have yet to see her beyond those brief moments while confronting David. It's been only a few days for all of you throughout this series, but for all of us, she's been missing for a year. I have no idea what David or his partner might have done to her during all that time. I don't know when I'll ever be able to see her again since I'm still on the run until the charges are dropped. If the charges are dropped, that is. What David said has shaken me. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it today. He told me I was there for him and not for Katie. That I was after the dragon, not the princess. I've realized that he's right. I've read a few of your responses and agree with you. I didn't write all that much about Katie during this series. If it had been about Katie, I would have written more. David was right. It wasn't about Katie. Katie was a result. It makes me feel guilty and dirty to think about it. Maybe it would be best if I never saw her again. She's not likely to want to see me. The last 2 years have been hell. But it's finally over. An NBSP. Series 2.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in the coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is Horror Slop.
The world isn't flat, but it isn't round either. I Learned the Hard Way, by PB 1707. 10 years ago, I pulled my wife's scorched, lifeless body out of a Florida swimming pool. Avery Jones was my soulmate. She was funny, spunky, and cute as hell. I was so deeply, ridiculously in love with her, and for good reason. She was way out of my league, but somehow, she liked me enough to marry me. "Come this way," Avery said, pulling me down a narrow stone path through the landscape to a secluded cave installation under a bridge. I pretended to think it was a bad idea, then tackled her into the water. We splashed and wrestled around for a few minutes by ourselves, the heavy rain clapping outside the cave. Whether it was a premonition or not, lightning struck the pool with a deafening crack. I was convinced Avery was my soulmate, so when she died, the world fell out of working order. Nothing made sense anymore. I never dated again nor had any interest in women. Or people, for that matter. I took a job in Texas, bought a townhome, and quickly got into a routine. I talked to my parents occasionally but only returned home maybe 3 times over the last 10 years. Not a day goes by that I don't think about her. Hell, not even an hour. As our 10th anniversary approached, the data analytics firm I worked for was bought by another company and I was let go. Though I was initially pissed, my tune shifted once the generous severance check came in the mail. The night the check came, I drank a lot and stumbled through Avery and my wedding album. Sometime around 1 in the morning, I made a decision. I decided that a decade of mourning was long enough. I decided that the next 10 years of my life weren't going to be steeped in self-pity. I would make something of myself. I'd read books again, I'd make videos again, I'd make friends, I'd pick up the guitar. The next night, with a drink in hand and money in the bank, I sat down at my desk and developed a plan with a vague goal of getting out of the country for a little bit. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, I fell into the rabbit hole called the Flat Earth Theory. I spent the next 3 hours reading and watching YouTube videos. For some reason, it all got funnier and funnier as the night went on. I didn't accomplish much that night, but by the next night, I had a solid plan. For the 3 weeks before my trip began, I moved back to Salt Lake City with my parents, who were surprisingly supportive of the endeavor. I rolled the pictures up tight, stuffed them in a dry Guinness bottle, then took the bottle and a shovel up the mountain behind my parents' house. About a quarter mile up the hill, I found a nice clearing amongst the scrub oak and dug a hole 2 feet deep. With my headlamp, I could see Avery's eyes peering at me through the thick brown bottle. I cried for a good 5 minutes then tossed it into the hole. I covered it the best I could and returned home to get a couple hours of shut-eye before flying out. I flew from Salt Lake to New York, New York to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Shanghai, Shanghai to Los Angeles, then Los Angeles to Salt Lake. I'm intentionally not getting into too much detail about the trip itself, because that's not really the point of me writing this. Okay, I'll indulge a little bit. How do you feel about that lame time capsule now? I know you probably didn't have this question specifically, but this is important to me. The longer the trip went on, the more embarrassed I felt about the time capsule I left in the ground behind my parents' house. The life I conveyed in that bottle was tinged with regret, loss, sorrow. Particularly my apathetic face standing in front of my stupid townhome or with my parents on Christmas. I decided, on my trip, that I wouldn't replace any of the pictures in the time capsule, but I would add some, change the ending of my story, if you will. Okay, enough of that. I brushed it off, telling myself that a month is a long time, my parents could have switched cell carriers and could have changed the garage code. Then I saw something at my feet. With the flashlight on my phone, I saw that I had dropped one of the old photos. It was the picture of me and my parents at dinner last Christmas at the Grand America Hotel. Only in this picture, there was a 4th person. A beautiful woman about my age with fair skin and long auburn hair. It was Avery. I was confused at first. Perhaps I had put a different picture in the bottle than I had thought. God knows Avery and I had gone to plenty of dinners with my parents when she was alive. But I wouldn't have done that. I already had a picture of Avery and me on our wedding day. That was enough. I remember distinctly thinking one picture of Avery was enough. I had before me two distinct realities, one in which Avery was alive and one in which Avery was dead. Everything else was the same. How the hell is this possible, I thought. Avery would have pursued her degree in nursing had she lived, I'm sure. The dual income would have allowed us to buy a house instead of a townhome, I figured. But still, what the fuck is happening? I stumbled into a new reality. I don't know how or when, but here I am, in a world where Avery lives. I'm sure that isn't the only difference, but it's the only one I'm aware of as of this writing. Two of them were my parents, looking the exact same as they did in the other reality. Then in walked Avery. My heart was pounding. Other me was wearing the same outfit I'm wearing today, even sporting the same scruff. The only difference was the little bit of gray hair above his ears. I slid further down the hill to get a closer look. For a moment, a long moment, I forgot about my replica and watched Avery. She was gorgeous in person, more gorgeous than in pictures. She had always been that way. This is what my life would look like if I hadn't been such a coward, I thought, feeling a tear trickle down my cheek. The four of them talked and laughed excitedly, eventually shedding their coats and moving to the front living room. I climbed down the rock wall and ran around to the front of the house, hiding behind a group of pine trees near the front stairs. My dad left for a couple minutes and returned with a bottle of wine and 4 glasses. As they rolled down the driveway in their 2019 Honda Accord, nice choice, I ran to the side of the house and found an old bike from my childhood rusted against the wall. Both tires were flat, and the front brakes didn't work, but since my parents lived way up in the mountains, wherever other me and Avery were going was downhill. They made their way into the kitchen and took off their coats. Other me started on the dishes and Avery sat on the couch, eyes glued to her phone. I figured they were exhausted. It was midnight after all. What did you do to Avery this time? Other me continued to speak calmly in defense, but there was no slowing Avery down. She grabbed a picture off the wall and threw it hard on the ground, the wooden frame crunching. Other me backed away slowly, moving to the other side of the kitchen island. Then Avery pounced. She ran at him with unrestrained vengeance and shoved him hard against the kitchen cabinets. He held his hands out again, pleading for her to calm down. She grabbed a plate from the sink and swung it at him, but he moved out of the way and it shattered violently against the cabinets behind him. This only made her madder. She shoved him again, then clawed at his face. Other me got tangled in his feet and stumbled against the fridge. She slapped him hard against the side of the head and he yelped in disbelief. Again, he begged for her to stop, but she didn't. She hit him 3 more times in the face while he slumped to the ground. After the third hit, one of his eyes was already swollen shut and blood was streaming down his face. Avery walked to the other side of the kitchen island and I breathed an audible sigh of relief. Avery, the girl of my dreams. The girl that made all my friends jealous. The girl I had on a pedestal for the last decade. A monster. I know that we tend to forget people's negative attributes after they've passed, but there was not a violent bone in Avery's body when I knew her. Not even an aggressive one. She was sweet, kind, loving. Not like this. Not at all. What happened to her? But no. Avery, please. Think about what you're doing. Look what you've done to me just now. We cannot keep living like this. I cannot keep living like this. I've put up with it for far too long, Other me said and stood up. Will you ever forgive me, she said. There was a minute of silence. I tried to steady my breathing despite feeling like I was going to explode. Other me had just turned on the car and was starting to back out of the driveway when Avery appeared with the knife. Other me continued backing out, his eyes growing wide when he saw the massive knife in her hand. He pulled into the street and sped away, leaving Avery standing in the driveway in her pajama shorts with a giant knife dangling by her side. When the headlights were gone, she dropped the knife and began crying again. Never should have left fucking Texas. After a few minutes, she returned inside and I could hear her cleaning up the mess. That's when something dawned on me. I made a time capsule because I was about to do something big, something life-changing. For me, I was about to embark on an around-the-world trip. But why would other me make a time capsule? Was he also planning something big? JFK to AMS, 1/4. AMS to PVG, January 12th. LAX to SLC, 1/23. Which meant he was going to experience what I just experienced. Probably. Lightning struck a tree nearby, knocking me to the ground, and killing the power to the rest of Fair Oaks. It began to rain. I walked to Orchard Drive and followed it to Dee's, the only 24-hour diner on this side of town. I'm writing this on a borrowed laptop in a booth that Avery and I had occupied many times when we were younger. My cab just got here, so this is the end of the line for me. There are plenty of unanswered questions here, questions I hope I'll eventually find answers to. All I know now is that I don't like the reality I came from and I don't like the reality I'm in now, so there's only one way to go. See you in New York, other me.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.